Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. Today I wanted to provide some tips on shading in realistic still water in a grayscale drawing. So I will be using the Staedtler Mars Lumograph black pencils in order to do this. I wanted to use these because I absolutely adore contrast and I wanted to get the darkest values in there. The Staedtler Mars Lumograph pencils allow me to use black tones. If you don't have anything in your graphite pencil collection that is as dark as that, don't worry about that. There's no rule saying that you have to have black shadows or black values in your work. This is just a personal preference of mine. So here in the drawing you can see that I am shading in the reflection of the bridge. The first thing that I do is focus on the reference photo and figure out where all the darkest values are placed and where all the lightest values are placed. So in other words, the light greys and the dark greys. So I looked at the reference photo and just figured out the shapes that I could see and then tried to replicate that with the graphite pencils. One of the tips that I would give is start from the lightest values and work your way up to the darkest. And this is mostly if you don't know what value would work the best or what pencil would work the best for the value that you're trying to achieve. And on this occasion, I didn't really know which of my pencils would achieve the value that I wanted. So whenever you're in doubt, start with the lightest value and then work your way up to the darkest. If, however, you already know what the darkest value should be and which pencil will produce that result, then you can very easily just go in with your darkest pencil if that's what you want to do. That's usually what I would do, but I had quite a bit of trouble with that section of the bridge. So the first thing that I did was go in with my 2B pencil, and once I shaded in the areas where I thought there needed to be shading, I went in with the blending stump. I then moved on to the 4B pencil and did the same, and then I went in with the 6B pencil, did the same thing, and then where I felt like I needed a darker tone, I went in with the HB pencil. The whole time I made sure to blend out with a blending stump, and that was very intentional. My favorite way of toning is what I call fine line toning. This is where you build up the tone by putting very faint lines next to each other. From what I've seen in my own artwork, whenever I use fine line toning, my work seems to come across as a lot more realistic than when I use the blending method. As a result of that, that is my favorite method to use. For this particular drawing though, because I have still water in it and I wanted to make it obvious that this is water and everything else around it isn't in the water, wherever there is still water, I have blended out the graphite just to give it a very smudged out look. I think it works perfectly as a contrast between what is in the water and what is outside of it, especially for a grayscale drawing. With, for example, colored pencil, you can make it obvious where the water is simply by coloring the water with a different color. With a grayscale drawing, on the other hand, it's so easy to lose what's in the water with the rest of the drawing because everything is in grayscale. So in that situation, and if it works with that particular drawing, I think it's a good idea to change the texture of the water compared to everything else, just to make it obvious that this is water. And that's why I chose to blend it out with a paper stump, and I left everything else as fine line toning. I think the difference becomes obvious in that way. I think that's all I really want to mention for this video, so it's completely gone out of my mind, but I think the tips I gave you was, first of all, to focus on the reference photo and figure out where the lighter values and the darker values are, and then add them in, using the lightest values first and then building up to the darker ones, unless of course you know exactly how dark you want things to go, in which case you can just go from darker to lighter. And lastly, for the water, especially in a drawing like this, make the water obvious by blending it out and keeping everything else as fine line toning. I'm not sure if I mentioned this in the beginning, but just bear in mind that this is the way I happen to tone things. Different artists have different ways of toning their artwork. In some artworks you might find that everything is blended out, not just the water, and then in others you might find that there is no blending at all. Really, when you are figuring out whether you want to do some fine line toning or blending things out, it's about looking at the reference photo and seeing the textures in that photo and figuring out the best pencil methods to recreate that texture. For me, the water needed blending. For other people, maybe it doesn't. That's all I have to say on this video. I hope it was helpful, and I hope that you would consider subscribing to my channel and sharing my video if that's what you would like to do. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.